Yeah, I'll call the Garden Grove City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Councilmember Broadwater,
Here.
Councilmember Doe,
Here.
Councilmember Wynn,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones,
Here.
Mayor Dalton.
Here. We'll have the invocation by Keith Jones, Public Works Director, and the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilwoman Wynn. I'll now open oral communication for the council, the agency, and the sanitary district. Nick Dibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, members and citizens of Garden Grove. My name is Nick Dibbs. Garden Grove has been my second home. I was born in Long Beach, raised in Long Beach, and we moved to Garden Grove a few years back, and I attended and graduated from Pacifica High School. It's wonderful to see some people from Pacifica here. A couple of comments that I want to bring to the city's attention. I'm here because our city, our county, our state, and our nation are in peril, both financially and otherwise. Cities all across this county and state and the nation are having trouble, that's obvious. And I have some solutions that I'd like to ask the council to consider. We need to look at the big picture. The city of Garden Grove has been a forward-thinking city. Back in the days prior to the Orange County bankruptcy, this city had the foresight not to have its money in the pool of funding that most of the other cities in the county had, and it was one of 3 cities that was able to avoid the bankruptcy because of that forward thinking. At the same time, we have to be forward thinking to the future and be proactive to deal with what is facing this country and our state and our community. And having ties to the city of Long Beach, where I ran for Congress in the last election, received 25% of the vote, I'm reminded of the mayor of Long Beach recently commented that his city is facing a $19.2 million deficit. And the state is trying to come in and take the city funds and so on. I'm sure that you're aware of that. It's all over. And so I want to bring to the council's attention, the city and the citizens of Garden Grove, that what we need is some proactive action, because there is a problem that we're facing, and that is that we're on an unsustainable path, both locally and nationally. We have policies that where we have 2 unjust wars going on, whether you're for or you're against the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The fact is we've spent over $1 trillion. We have another $1 trillion that's going to be spent before the troops come home. And if the troops come home sooner, less people will die. And so the Obama budget is $20 billion or more in military spending over what Bush had. So our military budget in this country is equal to what all the other countries of the world combined spend on military expenditures. And so what we need is, I wanted to propose to the council either a resolution, if possible, or you as individuals, members of the council, sending a letter to your members of Congress and to the White House asking that we have a fundamental shift, bring the troops home now, and spend that money, reduce the Pentagon budget by at least 25 to 30%. We can still adequately defend our nation and use that money to jumpstart our economies here at home, reduce class sizes in the classroom. I've been a teacher for over 15 years, have taught in Long Beach Unified, and Garden Grove Unified. We need to reduce class sizes and hire more teachers. So that's the fundamental change that we need in our nation, is to reduce the military budget. And at the height of the Vietnam War, Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech. And in the speech, I want to read the poem that he read, which is, "Oft to every man and nation comes a moment to decide, in the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side. A great cause, God's new Messiah, shows to each the bloom or blight. So can choice be made by all men twixt the darkness and the light. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet 'tis truth alone is strong. Though her portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own." I appreciate your listening to that. Unfortunately, I have not prepared a sample resolution. I'll be happy to do so and forward it to the council in the near future. And if you have any questions, I can be reached at 562-355-5171. That's 562-355-5171. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Owens.
I'm glad he spoke on that. You know, Afghanistan, Iraq, got 160,000 or more, whatever it is in Iraq, 49,000 in Afghanistan. Now, if I remember right, on the border is Pakistan and India. You know who drew the geographic lines between Pakistan and India? A stupid lawyer back in about 1756. Huh? A lawyer. Now, some lawyers are good. Some are stupid. See? A lawyer. And we're getting revved up to go into Afghanistan. Now, let me tell you something. The Russians went in there, huh? They put 15,000 Russians in boxes and sent them back, dead. Now, why do we think we're any tougher than Russians, huh, that fought the Nazis with pitchforks and drove them out of Moscow? Huh? We're getting revved up to go in. We're going to send our young people in there. Hey? That's why they've got to learn what's going on. We don't need to go into Afghanistan. Hey? Those guys are fighters. They eat wild dog for breakfast. The heels of their feet are like concrete. They're mountain fighters. Huh? Yeah, Russians are going to straighten them out all right. Huh? Put them back in boxes. 15,000 of them. Check it out. See? But he's getting revved up to go in. That's the biggest mistake we're going to make. Brother Wright, busting our country. What's wrong with Long Beach? $45 million deficit on the general fund, and they got $110 million in redevelopment they're doing the same year, next year. What's wrong with that picture? $45 million deficit to run the city and $110 million in the redevelopment. What's wrong with that picture? The Redevelopment Act was passed in 1951. The public decided to fund it. Okay? They funded it in 1961. The increase of the property, wherever the redevelopment is. The transformation of funds. The juice bag for you guys. Huh? $100,000 to run for council? Hey. And the average citizen can't get $8,000 to run. The redevelopment is a juice bag for you guys. Huh? Don't deny it. It's there. That's why you don't want to give the redevelopment agency up. If there was no money in it, you skim it off to some of the citizens. But that's your juice bag to keep you in office. I see old Broadwater over going to write. Hey, let him write. But don't misconstrue anything I say, or I'll get up in the audience and tell. But it's a juice bag for you guys. Hey, to put you in office for as long as you want to stay. And make any decisions you want to stay. And the public be damned. But you know, there's one thing here, fellas, that I tell you, I love you all. Huh? You don't give me that right, this Constitution. Huh? I don't know what amendment, what article. Huh? That's right. Huh? I remember the mayor of Long Beach didn't close oral communication. And I got up to speak, and she said, "Bob Owens, sit down, you ain't talking." I said, "I ain't sitting down. I'll have you arrested." I'm walking out with a cop. She never closed oral communication. I told that cop, I said, now listen, fella, I want you to read this Constitution, because that mayor didn't close oral communication. See? And I don't want to sue you, 'cause I like policemen and your grandma, huh? And the whole city council, because she did not close oral communication. Well, I'm going to back up and let me talk. Huh? But that's what it is. Huh? Long as I got that, I fear none of you. I fear no politician. Charlie, you're right. You got to be ready for a reform party. Shake this country up one side and down the other. You know what? People are dying in Orange County because of stress of what's happened. Huh? They're dying younger. Huh? They're dying of stress. Yeah. Because we sunk their houses. We put them out on the street because of our stupidity from the Congress, the both parties. We need a reform. We need a clean house. Not go in Afghanistan, hey, and put our young in there blind, like we did in Vietnam. We didn't go in and win, hey. But you know what? You look at that wall, every third name's in Hispanic, huh? They took a hit. They were there, buddy. They were there. I got to give you credit. You people have worked your way up fast. 35 years. You guys come a long way. I'll give you credit. But they had to pass the citizens test. How many of you can pass the citizens test? I can't. Huh? They passed the citizen test and then went and fought. The hell they get.
Okay, Bob, wrap it up, please.
Agreed. Shake them up.
Thank you.
Change the party. Get rid of them.
Rod Powell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to read from the grand jury report. This is the anatomy of safe and sane fireworks sales in Orange County. Before I start, I'm probably reading a paragraph less than I would have, but I want to point out what I'm reading tonight is important. And perhaps if you're in favor of these fireworks, or if that's what you've done, this is maybe why you so rudely use the words ridiculously biased, Mr. Jones. I think that the grand jury consists of people that, if I'm not mistaken, they volunteer for that. They perform a public service with no great reward, and we should be happy, that they have done that and show them some respect. No matter how you feel, you shouldn't have used the words ridiculously biased. That was an insult to all of them. Okay, I'm going to read this. The grand jury found. This is from Public Safety Issues. The grand jury found that city and safety officials are unable to enforce some municipal ordinances due to the sheer volume of illegal activity. For instance, most cities have an ordinance prohibiting the detonation of legal fireworks on public streets, public sidewalks, city parks, and public thoroughfares. Despite these ordinances, public areas are where most fireworks are detonated. Unfortunately, a byproduct of detonation on public property is a significant amount of expended fireworks shells that are not properly disposed of, or that are thrown into storm drains, which accumulate in catch basins. Stanton's Public Works crew schedule no work for the entire week following the 4th of July so that it can concentrate on cleaning debris from the city streets, both mechanically and by hand. Other cities do not change the normal street sweeping schedule to clean the debris from the streets immediately. Regarding the debris, one city official said that, quote, eventually the wind blows it away. Nonprofits do not pay any of the cost for cleaning up the debris left in public areas. Safety officials stated that roving gangs come from as far away as San Diego to ignite illegal fireworks in the 5 Orange County cities, all the while masking their activities by integrating with large crowds detonating legal fireworks. Most illegal fireworks are aerial. By the time safety officials follow the vapor trails to the site of the illegal detonation, the offenders have moved on to another area of the city. Public parks have become a prime location for the detonation of both legal and illegal fireworks. In response, cities have posted notices and closed public parks before sundown on the 4th of July. The sprinkler systems are also activated to deter anyone from coming into the parks. Activating the sprinkler system in the public parks has been an effective method of deterring any fireworks activity at those locations. In 2007, legal and illegal fireworks caused a peaceful gathering in a park to be disrupted. Local residents had gathered in a public park, in anticipation of viewing a public fireworks display in an adjoining city. While that gathering was peaceful and largely made up of local families, a separate gathering occurred in another section of the park. People began detonating fireworks, both legal and illegal. Their activity drew a response from the local police department, and the park was evacuated. Subsequently, complaints were directed at the officers instead of those who disrupted the lawful gathering by their detonation of legal and illegal fireworks. In another city, rival gang members fashioned shoulder-mounted grenade launchers out of PVC pipe. The launchers were loaded with a combination of illegal fireworks and altered legal fireworks. The gangs blocked the street with stolen shopping carts to impede police response and proceeded to have a firefight against each other. It is not unusual in some neighborhoods to see rows of stepladders in the streets used to elevate the detonation of legal fireworks for visual effect. According to one safety official, the smoke can be so thick from fireworks detonation in some neighborhoods that it resembles an eerie fog. One senior citizen mobile home park was completely shut off from safety services because of persons detonating fireworks and blocking the entrance to the residences. Residents were unable to enter or exit the mobile home park because of these blocked entrances. You know, I'm short of time, so I might just wing the last few seconds I have to talk. I wish I had about 6 minutes, but I don't. Anyways, I don't know if anyone's going to mention it, but Robin Marcario last week was up here and she was talking about putting together a bus bench, a mosaic. If you haven't been there, it really looks nice. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
How did the grand jury know the shopping carts were stolen?
We would have to ask the grand jury. I mean, I can't answer for them.
Okay. Mike Silva. It's not a,
Now it's the time to speak.
yeah, it's not a public hearing, so if you want to speak on any issues, they're not public hearings, you speak now during all communications.
Good evening, I'm Mike Silva. We have the property at 12939 Main Street. And I was speaking about item 7B, which is the dissolution of the parking district. And I just want to make sure that, and I think it was in the staff report, that we maintain the Main Street Commission, even if that district is dissolved, and that the parking issues on both the east and west side can be addressed. I think Scott Weimer is going to address it, but I believe he did some calculations at the east side. We're supposed to have like 145 spots, and we're down to 45. And as you know, now the colleges strictly enforce their parking regulations, so if you go into their section at all, they tow you or write you tickets. So the east side's completely a disaster at this point in time. And obviously, if the west side condo project gets built, we need to make sure there's enough parking there. So I just want to make sure that if that's dissolved, that at least Main Street's protected on both sides of the street there. Okay?
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mike. Peggy Bergen.
I just thought after about 5 weeks, you guys might have missed me, so I better get up and say something. I have had a very lovely vacation. I went to Ireland for a wedding. I walked in the Mediterranean in Cyprus, and I was at a chamber music concert in London. So I really covered a lot of ground and was on 7 planes, and it made this place look interesting, the planes. But no, I just have a couple of little comments here. Well, one of them, on one of the comments on the city council was the appearance of the signs, the Amber Alert signs. I've gotten, because people know I come here, so they see me places and they come up to me and comment on things, and they have commented on the signs. And the one standard thing they've got is who designed them, because the uniform decision is they're very ugly. They just stand out in a very bad way, I think. And my opinion is they're not going to age very well. So in another 5 or 10 years, they're even going to look worse. But I think they're too close to the freeway exits, Because when you get off the freeways, your first thought is, if you're not a local resident of that 4 or 5 block area, is moving into the proper lane. And you're moving into the proper lane, and this is up here. And I also don't think they should have any written words on them when there's not an alert, because subconsciously, if you see words on that alert all the time, if there is a problem, your eyes aren't going to be attracted to it. And I have noticed the one at Harbor has been having, all the time, of course, we all should know it, if you see a drunk driver, call 911. Well, basically speaking, if you're driving, you can't pick up your cell phone, so you can't call 911. And if you're at home, you're not going to see the sign to call 911, and you're not going to see the driver. But I don't think you should have words on it at all times, because people just get used to seeing it up there, and they don't really pay any attention to it. And also on I think it's the sanitary district, my only question was, what is the purpose of the property that's being considered on Bailey Street? The use of this property. And somewhere along the line, I believe I read that it was $540,000 for that. And I'm kind of wondering how come all of a sudden this is worth $540,000 now when my house has gone down $300,000 in the last year. I would assume that price would also have gone down. And also on, I believe this is also community development. The property that's a closed session item, which was on discussion, I hope if we're buying property for $540,000 in one part of Garden Grove, we are also selling this piece for $540,000. Because it seems to me if we're able to buy property for $540,000, we should actually get our money back out of something we already own. But anyway, other than that, I missed you guys. I've missed being at home. I'm glad to be back, and we had our Strawberry Festival this weekend, which is always a very good blending of all of our community. I'm always very impressed how, with all the things you read in the paper about people's groups not getting along, you go over there and you can bump into people of any ethnic origin, and they all just laugh and keep right on walking. So that goes to show we really do have a very good blended community here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scott Weimer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, staff. I'm still reeling, still trying to figure out what's going on here. We have a special benefits district that has been in existence for 55 years, provides a useful and necessary function to the people of whom it serves, has worked productively, beneficially, and successfully with all past councils and city staffs, of course this one, except for this one, of course. And now all of a sudden and out of nowhere, we find that meetings have been held between staff and yourselves that and that the abolishment of our district has been discussed, that a vote has been taken, and that staff has been instructed to seek whatever legal means are necessary in order to shut us down forever. What happened to any kind of spirit of cooperation? Perhaps inviting us to attend and participate in some of those discussions? What happened to any attempt to provide any level of transparency to the acts of which are going to affect all of us over there on Main Street very negatively? Well, I would like to share some facts and opinions that differ significantly from staff's allegations and that are contained in the staff report, most particularly those that suggest that the Main Street Vehicle Parking District is no longer needed, is underutilized, and is currently useless. I believe quite the contrary. The purpose of the parking district is not only to acquire and improve new spaces, but to also protect the existing spaces. Some of us have been so compromised when it comes to adequate parking that it just astounds me that that staff can actually purport at this particular point in time that the few parking lots that we do have left are underutilized. Please allow me to start with a few historical points that were left out of the report. As evidenced by the original incorporation papers filed with the county, this parking district predates the city and was established as a special benefits district under state law and was created by the very same association of business and property owners who still own property on the street and businesses and operate businesses on the street. It was their intent from the beginning to acquire parcels of land adjacent to the Main Street in order to develop parking lots to serve their businesses. The commission was then further established under state law to be the representatives of the business and property owners. Its members were originally charged with seeking out, finding, negotiating with business and property owners, and ultimately acquiring these properties that could be turned into and improved into parking lots. Furthermore, and rather than relying on the county to grant them lands or selling bonds in order to purchase these lands, the property owners, by consent, decided to tax themselves to the highest amount allowable by law in order to accumulate money into the Vehicle Parking Acquisition Fund. And it was with these monies particularly that these parking lots were purchased. They eventually developed 6 paved and completed parking lots serving the Main Street Commercial District. Now fast forward 55 years, and understand that following several city takings over the last several years, we only have right and claim to 2 of those original lots remaining in the district and available for parking. Parking today is still needed and is still required, and is currently, in our opinions, we're trying to operate over there, at some of its lowest points. With most of the earthquake retrofitting buildings now being occupied, of which were vacant during the parking study, new restaurants that have opened and are also scheduled to open soon, along with the recently approved mixed-use commercial residential zoning that now encompasses all of Main Street, providing for additional residential lofts above the existing commercial occupancies, 2 of which have been approved, Main Street Pizza and the 3-story mixed development on the Peterson's lot. We now, more than ever, need to not only preserve the few current parking lots we have, but be in a position to be able to acquire some additional ones soon in order to accommodate these additional needs and uses. And these currently scheduled Main Street expansions have created a need of additional parking places, but doesn't even take into consideration the Sheldon project, which is now becoming imminent, which will, and contrary to the inaccurate, I should say, parking study at best, will have a significant impact on the level of parking spaces available to us. Take my office building, for example, 6,250 square feet. City requires 25 spaces. The adjacent property owner, Mr. Asher, requires 32 spaces at 7,800 square feet. That comes up with 52 spaces between our 2 occupancies, of which we had in excess prior to the taking of parking lot 4 that was given to Coastline College. Unfortunately now, Mr. Asher and I are forced to share 12 spaces when the code requires 50-some spaces, and we used to have 75 or so. The same thing happened when the city essentially closed down parking lot 5 and gave the exclusive parking rights to the Laverne campus. Now, if you remember, you review the minutes of those meetings, you'll see that we were first promised a parking structure to staff in exchange for giving up those 2 parking lots back there. Well, as you can see, that unfortunately never transpired. Later, we were promised access to the school lots, full access to the school lots, and full customer use during normal business hours. As you can see further, however, by the parking for students only signs in both lots, that promise also failed to materialize. As a matter of fact,
So would you wrap it up?
all right, I've got 2 more points I'd like to make, Mr. Mayor. These are very important
Okay,
points
make
that
them
I'd like
quick, please.
all of them to consider. All right. So I don't understand how we can be advocating abolishing of the parking district due to its lack of need and usefulness. Quite contrarily, we need to start thinking about additional spaces. If you take into consideration my building and all the rest of the buildings on the east side of the street, and if you calculate them per the city's code for the size of the building and the occupancy type, they actually come up to, Mike got the wrong number, it's 268 spaces. We currently have 62 spaces, less than 25% of the amount required. Last but not least, I also really don't believe that we have the legal authority here in order to abolish the parking district. I know it can be very voluntarily dissolved by its own members or by the parties of whom it serves.
Peter Katz.
I'll be back next week.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council, staff, and residents of the City of Garden Grove. I'm Peter Katz, Chairperson of the Parking and Main Street Commission, and I'm here tonight on a point of personal privilege as Chairperson of that Parking and Main Street Commission and on behalf of all of its commissioners. Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, "I never knew any facts about anything. My intellectual furniture consists of an assortment of general conclusions which grow fewer and more general as I grow older. I always say that the chief end of a man is to frame them, and that no general conclusion is worth a damn." On that note, at its May 14th, 2009 meeting, the Parking and Main Street Commission introduced a motion to table this decision, asking a series of questions that need to be answered on behalf of the citizens of this city. In synopsis, some of them are, what is the intent and purpose in abolishing Vehicle Parking District Number 2? How did this decision come about? Why was a special meeting with no notice to the public used as the forum for this decision? Why was the Parking Commission not even given a courtesy notice of the meeting? Why was the Commission not given opportunity for input or discussion? Why is there no full financial accounting of the Commission prior to this decision to abolish and dissolve? What will be the disposition of funds in the Parking District Number 2 budget, which totals over $140,000? What will be the impact on the historic overlay zone with the loss of parking lots 1, 2, and 3? I have a couple points in the staff report's analysis. 1, the declining need for a vehicle parking district. Why is it that every other CUP coming before this council has problems with parking that require zoning changes or exemptions to shoehorn less than required parking spaces under city ordinances? This will only increase and worsen. There are 56 parcels within the parking district, according to staff. Do all these parcels have adequate parking according to code, or are most shoehorned by zoning changes or CUP exemptions? And if so, why? If there are parking inadequacies, why are antiquated parking studies used to justify exceptions? Costs. The staff points out that consulting fees, legal charges, and staff time are costly. This money for this comes out of the Parking and Main Street budget itself. And those are paid by a special assessment on the property owners. It seems that general levy tax revenue allocated to the VDP outlined in the staff report does not match the VDP budget reports. $1,415 tax apportionment in staff report does not equal the numbers as presented in the Funds 531 and 532 in the latest budget analysis. So in conclusion, therefore, and pursuant to our rights as public commissioners under the Brown Act and in the spirit of full disclosure and transparency, I hereby request on behalf of my fellow commissioners of the Parking and Main Street Commission that all requested information be provided and that the city table and postpone any further meetings and discussions regarding this matter until the Parking and Main Street Commission is in receipt of and has had at least 30 days for review all above referenced and requested information. And B, to delay any further actions of any type and kind by staff or other city officials until the Parking and Main Street Commission is in receipt of and has had at least 30 days in order to review a staff report and all above referenced and requested information. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Harris.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council and staff. My name is Jeremy Harris. I'm the Executive Officer of the Garden Grove Downtown Business Association. I'm here tonight on behalf of the association and its 50-plus members and all who are concerned with the economic vitality of Main Street, its businesses, and the restaurants down there as well. The association urges you to reconsider Agenda Item 7B, the initiation of proceedings for a dissolution of Vehicle Parking District Number 2. At a minimum, the association would like the opportunity to be involved in the process to become more informed for the intentions of dissolving the parking district. We believe this will give business owners and members of the community to interact with city staff and provide valuable input when deciding such a weighty decision tonight. By allowing input from stakeholders on Main Street and members from the community before city staff exerts more valuable time and effort, we believe this will be beneficial to both parties. We understand the historical significance of vehicle parking districts, and while the city staff's report points to declining functions and the need for such districts, we feel the proper way to address these findings is through open dialogue and complete transparency. As you know, small business is the lifeblood of our local economy. In order for small businesses to succeed, especially on Main Street, parking issues must be resolved as has been promised in the past. Why we feel by moving to initiate dissolution of the Vehicle Parking District Number 2, tonight may be premature without opening proper channels with individuals who do businesses in and around Main Street, including those within the boundaries of the Vehicle Parking District. We respectfully request that the mayor and council table this item and respectfully request a seat at the table with city staff and other interested parties on this important issue to our membership, the small business owners, and the community members in and around Vehicle Parking District Number 2. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Robin Macario.
Good evening, council, staff, Garden Grove residents. I'm Robin Marcario, lifelong resident. I just wanted to thank the council for your permission to beautify one of our bus benches. I know you can't see the picture. I'll pass it around. It was along the parade route. It was ready for the Strawberry Festival. It's got our Garden Grove logo here with the strawberries. It has spring flowers into summer flowers and our sort of city symbol or seal with the sunflowers. So it turned out really great. I've received lots of positive comments. And with your permission, would like to perhaps do another bench, like with maybe fall leaves across colorful fall leaves look like they're blowing in the breeze. So I'll present another mosaic for your consideration. But I just wanted to thank you. I will pass it. I can see Broadwater. You're just dying to see it. I'll be right there. It's not lavender. It's mosaic tiles. There are glass and porcelain tiles here. I'll give it to you because I know you're dying to see it. For those of you in the public that are interested, it's on Chapman, just east of Euclid, right in front of the First Christian Church. Our council was very, very supportive in beautifying our city. I just want to thank you for that. And also commend our Strawberry Festival Association. They did a wonderful job for the Strawberry Festival. Every person on there is a volunteer. They do a fantastic job. We had a successful festival. On behalf of one of our service clubs, the Kiwanis Club, I was on the service club wagon. We were a horse-drawn wagon and got to wave to everyone. It was fantastic, a great community event. I also wanted to mention that I think that as the previous speakers have mentioned, that the public and the business owners need some clarification as to why you're considering dissolving this parking Main Street district. There's a lot of confusion. I've received a half a dozen phone calls. Why are they doing that? I said, well, I'll convey that message to you and ask for some clarification because I'm a communication major and open dialogue and communication always presents a better democratic process. I also, lastly, would like to wish a happy birthday to my beloved neighbor, William Young. He is 88 years old today. Like he says, I'm 88 like a piano, 88 keys, So, Bill, I'll be home pretty quick, and I'll bring you a big chocolate birthday cake for you, and happy birthday to you, Bill. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Charles Mitchell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and staff. What is the heritage of Garden Grove? Yes, we have a heritage museum on Euclid Street, and we have a heritage foundation. But what is the true spirit of our city? Do we only take pride in the size of our hotels, or is there a sense of involvement within our community? Do we celebrate the volunteerism only to the extent that it serves the purposes of City Hall? If you visit City Hall and many of our Main Street shops and restaurants, you'll see photos of our city's early years. Our fire department has a proud history of service to the residents, including an original fire truck. Our historic downtown Main Street buildings have been retrofitted to protect them from earthquake damage and to preserve them for future generations to enjoy. Preserving buildings is only a part of maintaining our heritage, though. To keep a vibrant and prosperous Main Street also requires that we provide a place for visitors to park. It appears to be counter to logic that the city would try to dissolve a commission whose sole purpose is to help preserve a part of our community's early beginnings. It is especially strange when you consider that the commission even predates the founding of our city. There are many ways to destroy a heritage. One of the cruelest is to take away the very heart and soul of our city by terminating the Parking and Main Street Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Cosetta.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, citizen. If I may, I'd like to yield my time. I'd like to hear what Mr. Scott Weimer had to say. If I may yield my time so he could finish. Your call.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. I hope you're applauding me for allowing it.
We certainly are, Mr. Mayor. Actually, this is for you, Mr. Mayor. The information contained herein, I've actually had the opportunity to discuss most of this with most of the other members, and I only had 2 additional points here. In the staff report also that was presented to you, that you have in front of you, it also cites that the additional administrative costs from consultant fees, legal charges, and staff time that this commission has cost them. Well, this commission is self-supporting. I know because I pay the taxes. I pay almost a double property tax bill that goes into the Main Street Commission that pays for staff time and pays for actually any sort of involvement that the city has with us. The only additional incurred charges, legal charges, consultant fees, and et cetera, were, of course, incurred with this latest lawsuit. And it not only cost you, it cost us dearly, and we sincerely apologize for that. But you have to understand that after all of these years and all of these false promises, particularly on the east side that I'm dealing with on a day-by-day basis, that we were promised access to the parking lots. We didn't have access to the parking lots. We were promised a parking structure. We didn't get a parking structure. And of course, the conditions of the development agreement with Sheldon was that we were going to be allowed to trespass onto his property, that we were going to have a right-of-way of some sort onto the property. But those are the same kind of promises that we received on my side of the street. And so please do not condemn us for attempting to maintain and support and defend our rights for fear of losing the last large parking lot of which we have remaining over there. From 6 lots, we're down to 2 now. So please take that into consideration. The only other point that I wanted to make was that I really don't believe that the city here has the legal authority in order to abolish our parking district and its commission. I know that it can be voluntarily dissolved by its own members or by the parties of whom it served once they make the determination that parking is no longer needed and decide to close it down on themselves and wind down the business. But in this case, the parking district was created of the business and property owners. It was created by the business and property owners, and it was created for the benefit of the business and property owners on Main Street. And it is recognized as such under the government code as an agency of the state for the local performance of governmental and proprietary functions within these specific geographical boundaries that have been established over there on Main Street. It was also created under county authority and jurisdiction and was actually, again, as I have to point out, was here before you were. And when I say you, I mean before the city was incorporated, before any council was ever elected, and before a city staff was established. The parking district supervision was simply passed on to you by the county as being the newly formed legislative body that has jurisdiction over those particular geographical lands that our parking district happens to sit in. And along with it, when you inherited us, you took along with it the duties imposed upon you as a trustee, as a guardian, as guardians of our commission. Of those very parking lots of which we have statutorily, supposedly, supervision, control, management rights, and charge of. And you should also be protecting our vested rights as creators and beneficiaries of those parking lots and that service our businesses and add value to our properties. I'll leave it at that for now. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to continue to speak. I feel those are all very important points, and I would implore you to please take them into serious consideration before making your decision tonight to continue with the abolishment of our parking district.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll close oral communications. At this time, hold on, wait a second. There's a lot of young people here from the high schools. Why don't we take 5 minutes? If any of you do you have papers that have to be signed? You can bring them up, and anybody up here, over there or right here. We'll do that so you're not stuck here all night. And we'll go to consent items.
Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that items 4A through 4H be acted on simultaneously unless a separate discussion or action is requested by a council member.
Move to balance.
Second.
Okay, a motion second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
Okay, committee matters. 6A.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. At this time, it's requested that the City Council make an appointment to the vacant position of the Garden Grove Housing Commission.
Okay, and the recommendation is don't have that. Thank you. Okay, the person selected to be appointed is Ella Navarez, a resident of Garden Grove. Is Ella here? You're not Ella? Okay. Well, anyway, I don't know if she has been notified, but I'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I have a motion and a second out of that. Okay, call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
And Ella will be notified, I'm sure. Okay, items for consideration.
Mr. Mayor, 7A is the initiation of proceedings for the Main Street Assessment District, number 1, for fiscal year 2009-10, and approving the engineer's report. And Ron Meisland is here to give the staff report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, on April 14th, 2009, the council adopted Resolution 8877-9, which directed the engineer to prepare the required report under the Landscape Lighting Act of 1972. You have before you the engineer's report that outlines the improvements and maintenance costs for the upcoming fiscal year 2009-2010 for the Main Street Assessment District number 1. The engineer's report, along with the attached resolution, is the next step towards the levy and collection of the assessment of the property owners. Therefore, staff recommends that City Council approve the engineer's report for Main Street District 1 and adopt the attached resolution, which will meet the requirements under the Landscape Lighting Act of 1972, declare the intention to levy and collect an assessment for the maintenance of fiscal year 2009-2010, and set a protest hearing regarding this assessment for June 23, 2009. This concludes my staff report, and I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Actually, I do, Mayor.
Go ahead, Mr. Dell.
I'm looking at the revenues and expenditure statement, December 2008, and I noticed that the budget for 2008-2009 for general maintenance and street sweeping was listed as $3,500, and I noticed for 2009 and 2010 is up to $15,500. Can you tell me why the big difference?
I think you might be referring to, one's the parking district and one is the Main Street Assessment District.
I did. You're right. I withdraw my question there. Thank
Okay.
you. No questions.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
Okay, 7B.
Mr. Mayor, 7B is the initiation of proceedings for the dissolution of Vehicle Parking District Number 2, and Chet Yoshizaki is here to give the staff report on this item.
Mr. Mayor, the item before you is a resolution of intention to initiate proceedings relative to the dissolving of the Vehicle Parking District Number 2. In the staff report, I identified the chronology, which began back in 1955, prior to the incorporation of the city, and subsequently thereafter, in 1958, the Vehicle Parking District was transferred from the county responsibility to the city. Over the past 25 years, the actual function and need for the Vehicle Parking District has diminished and declined due to the number of changes within the way in which developments occurred within the district, and since the city incorporated, parking lots and parking spaces were required as part of the developments that took place. The Vehicle Parking District today continues to incur various costs, primarily administrative costs. When the City Council, which has the ultimate discretion on the use and maintenance and uses of the parking district parking lots, we need to go through an extensive process which incurs some legal fees to go through the public hearing notices, etc. There's also ongoing administrative costs which are not listed in the budgets before you relative to the accounting of the budget and things of that nature. All that for a mere revenue funding source from the county through the assessment district of approximately $1,415 as estimated for this current fiscal year. That being the case, where normally there would need to be changes or modifications, those can be handled by the City Council as we do with normal city-owned properties. The City Council in the dissolution will consider the dissolution in a manner similar in which the parking district was formed. And to that end, the initial step is for a resolution adopted by the City Council with the intent to dissolve the district, which requires that a date be set for a public hearing where those in favor or against can present their case before the City Council at the public hearing. After such time, the council can then rule to adopt an ordinance in the dissolution or to decline moving forward with that action. The resolution also will not only set the time and date for the public hearing, which will be approximately 45 to 60 days from now, and if the council approves the resolution this evening. And at the same time, if it does move forward, there would be an ordinance also introduced to modify the composition of the commission, since a dissolution will require a change in the municipal code, eliminating the title of parking to the Main Street Business District. Staff recommends that the resolution of intention be adopted, setting the place for the time for the public hearing, and will also consider the follow-up ordinance relative to the structure of the committee. I have included in the staff report the agenda and comments made by the Parking and Main Street Commission at their meeting of May 14th for your general information. Relative to the adoption of this resolution, there is no fiscal impact, nor does it relate to a community goal. And again, finally, the staff recommends that the attached resolution of intention regarding VPD District Number 2 be approved. With that, staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Doe?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. What is the estimated administrative cost annually to maintain the parking district?
The estimated expenditures, I just roughly estimated, Council Doe, to be approximately 2 to 3 times what revenue we receive from the county. It's just an educated guess. We don't charge specific time of professional and city staff relative to the accounting, but knowing the procedures we've gone through in making the modifications that we make periodically with regard to any land use changes, there are legal fees that are incurred.
I find it troubling that the ASR indicated that there are significant, and I'm using the word from the ASR, administrative cost. And yet, we don't have any breakdown as to cost, and all we have is an eyeball amount. I mean, we're asked to make an opinion based on just an estimate here, Mr. Yoshiaki?
Well, I've estimated, to the best of my knowledge, time for staff time and the amount of personnel allocated, and as I mentioned, my best estimate is about 3 times the annual revenue received.
And what does that translate to
It's
in
about
dollars?
$3,000 to $4,000.
Okay. The consultant fees and the legal charges and staff time, well, exclude the staff time, but the consultant fees and legal charges, were those incurred as part of the litigation?
No, the staff time, or the consultant time there was parking studies relative to updating demand and supply
When was last time it was done?
in 2005.
Okay, so you incur the consultant fees in 2005. How about the legal charges, excluding the litigation that involved the Main Street Business Association? Did the city incur any legal charges as part of the maintaining the parking district?
Not with regard to maintaining, however, if there were changes that occurred, either change of use or any of those procedures, we do substitution of uses or lots, we incur legal costs.
Okay. So if we were to take out the litigation involving the Main Street Business Association, we know that the cost, the annual cost of maintaining the parking district, we know the cost of the consultant fees on a periodic basis to do the consultant work that you mentioned. What changed between 2005 and now that necessitates us now trying to dissolve the district?
Well, actually, as Mr. Yoshizaki mentioned, over the past 25 years, the development within the Civic Center area has changed dramatically from when the district was formed. Your Costco's, your Office Depot, your Education Center, all of those now require their developments to be self-contained parking, no longer relying on a district type of format. So with every development opportunity that's brought forward to the city, I think Celeste has done some form of research as to how do we address the development as it relates to the district. So the district constantly has provided reasons for the city to have to do legal research on how to evolve from a district type of providing parking to what is now the more traditional form of having developments provide their own parking. So yeah, just about every development has required our legal counsel to do research and report back that we are in compliance with the district format as we try to move development forward.
And I would add that, from my experience, it goes back to the middle 80s, and I believe there were proceedings prior to that time. But since the middle 80s and following, every time a proposed development project that is located within the boundaries of the vehicle parking district is proposed, as your city manager explained, for instance, to have self-contained parking, we must undertake proceedings under the Vehicle Parking District Act of 1943 to determine whether or not it's a substitution proceeding or a change of use proceeding. And you, as a legislative body of the vehicle parking district, you wear that separate hat. You are the decision maker concerning how to make adjustments to the vehicle parking district in order to accommodate the new development, the redevelopment. So we have done a number of change of use proceedings. We've done a number of substitution proceedings, each of which have involved the Parking and Main Street Commission as an advisory body, but you as the legislative body are the decision maker. And then overlaid with that, we're each time those proceedings are done, there are some consulting costs involved related to parking analysis.
And so basically, our basic argument is by dissolving the district, we make it easier for us to make use changes? Is that what we're saying?
No, you just would be operating public parking lots as you do in other parts of the city, rather than having this extra layer of government that, to administer the parking lots.
Okay. I will ask you the more legal questions that I think we as a city will be facing once litigation starts over the dissolution of this parking district. But I wanted to stay for a moment on just the ASR, on the equity.
Point of order.
Mr. Broadwater?
Have we been threatened with litigation on this?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. And you interrupted me for what, Mr. Broadwater?
You said that litigation, I thought we had been threatened. I was just checking to make sure that that hadn't happened.
And why is that a point of order, just because you have a question in the middle of my questioning?
Well, not so at all. You made a point. I just wanted to make sure.
No.
that-
Point of order means I spoke out of line. You should know that.
Don't get too loud with me, please. I'm an old man. I may not be able to handle that.
And I've been giving you a lot of deference, but you don't interrupt me just to ask a question to prove a point, okay? That's not a point of order, Mr. Broadwater.
Okay, let's go ahead and get back on track.
When the ASR mentioned that each change of use is basically accompanied by extensive and expensive proceedings that are not normally required. What it sounds to me like is we want to make it easy for us to do what we want. Now, I want to make sure that's what is meant here.
I don't think the term easy is what we're trying to achieve. What we are demonstrating is that the vehicle parking district mechanism is obsolete. It no longer served the purpose that it did prior to the city's incorporation. Therefore, as we have considered several developments within the district boundaries to approve developments that are compliant with current codes and how development is occurring, the fact that the vehicle parking district exists forced the city to go through a process which was rather extensive and expensive, which required reports back from our legal counsel that to approve Costco, to approve Office Depot, to approve the education center, all of those required compliance and to make sure that we are within the vehicle district structure to allow these developments to go forward. So we were constantly at beating up against what is a outdated provision with more modern development approaches because the vehicle parking district was in existence.
These issues with parking over at Costco, when was it opened?
1994.
Okay. So having gone through that process and the expense of having to get a legal opinion on the use of the parking district back in 94, how come you didn't move to dissolve the parking district then?
It probably was contemplated. I think this issue is not new. This issue has been brought forward just about every time we look at this issue.
Well, the fact is that it was not pursued back then. And we have the litigation involving the Main Street Business Association that just happened, that terminated just recently, favorably in favor of the city, so that's good. But the point here is it seems to me, and I'm the new kid on the block, that this is retribution for that legal action. And I find it very difficult for me to go along with government using all of the resources and the power that we have to roll over someone that actually was just asserting their rights. And the ASR specifically said that the dissolution of the parking district would, and I'm quoting, streamline any future policy direction. Streamline. Is that really, so I want to make sure going forward that we're not, we call it for what it is that we want to make our job easy or easier. So let's discuss that, and I want to get it straight. If the reason is based on the obsolescence of the parking district, then why wasn't this issue brought forth 15, 20 years ago?
It was. It had been mentioned. I think the fact that there was a lawsuit in connection with a most recent development only stresses the fact that as long as the district is in place, the city is susceptible to this kind of opposition, this kind of expensive litigation, because the district is in place. When we have determined that through the way development has occurred in this area, that the district does not serve that same purpose that it did initially. So, yes, it only emphasizes that the district in its configuration is an obstacle and does inhibit the city from doing business in an expedient and cost-effective manner.
We heard from an owner on Main Street earlier that said that there are just 2 buildings on the east side of Main Street. The code requires that they have 57 parking spaces on the east side, and now they're down to 12. Now, I'm familiar with the area because I drive by there and use the area quite a bit. The only way to park in the lot that belongs to the college is if you have a placard that says that you're part of the business on Main Street. And so if you're the general public and you want to, say, do business in any of these 2 buildings, you're limited on the east side to the parking spaces that are in the alley behind the building. And like Mr. Weimer said earlier, they're down now to 12 spots. And we can say that they can park over at the college. The point is there are signs that say specifically, if you're not students, you run the risk of being towed. So how can we say that the parking district is obsolescence and that there's no need for the business, the owners on Main Street to have a voice in this process?
Well, I think we also need to somehow separate out the legal entity of the district and the physical existence of parking spaces. The parking spaces that are there today will remain there whether the district exists or is dissolved. So the issues having to do with use of the college parking or the 12 spaces in the alley, that will exist whether the district remains or the district is dissolved. So that isn't a germane point to bring relative to the dissolution of the district.
But let's just say in 4, 8 years, and everyone here on this council is replaced. You got 5 new council members. And at that point, there is no parking district to give a voice, to protect these interests on Main Street. Then the city would have every power, every right at that point to exercise its change of use, right?
They have that today.
They have not, you said?
They have that right today, and the council has done that in the Grove Street Housing Project, and it's done it numerous times. So again, the dissolution of the district won't change that council ability. whether it's today or 5 years from now.
And will the city face any kind of legal challenge if we were to let me go back. Would we spare ourselves any litigation if we were to dissolve the parking district? Ms. Brody?
Well, you would spare litigation as you just entered into, which was a challenge to a change of use proceeding. The last series of legislative actions that you took as a vehicle, under the vehicle parking district law had to do with the change of use proceedings in relation to the Sheldon project. That was challenged in court and was successful at the trial level. It was appealed, and it was successful on appeal, both in favor of the city in both instances. Your city manager is correct in that the public parking places are operated by the city of Garden Grove. The vehicle parking district happens to be an extra layer of a special district that was quite popular in the 40s and 50s when there were more traditional downtowns. It's interesting that this vehicle parking district law has not been amended or modified or considered by the state legislature for literally decades, because it is a series of laws that has become somewhat arcane and obsolete. There is no ability for you, for instance, to increase those assessments and add tax. The $1,451 that's assessed and collected each year, that's it. There are some monies in the accounts as exist today that are cumulative, but they're not, in the terms of the city of Garden Grove, they're not significant amounts. I believe the acquisition account has approximately $27,000. And if you did a parking study today on what it costs to produce a parking space, it would be in the $20-something thousand. So you, from a city government perspective, this layer of government doesn't allow you to, for instance, what you're doing this year for your prior item, where you had an assessment to continue to identify how much that levy for each property owner, I believe it's around $18 a year, that's it. That's what this vehicle parking district does. So any other additional charges that are incurred in relation to the vehicle parking district, whether it's in-house staff time or whether it has to do with a proposed development, is subject to this extra layer of proceedings called the Vehicle Parking District Act of 1943, under which the change of use proceedings or the substitution proceedings or not having something be a parking lot any longer or adding another parking lot, those are the discretionary and decision-making of the city council. The Parking and Main Street Commission, the parking part of it, is part of the Vehicle Parking District Act of 1943. It's an advisory body that deals just with the day-to-day administration, if you will, of those parking spaces. They can determine rules and regulations about when people can park, or to determine whether or not things need to be restriped, or how often they're swept, and things of that nature. But if you want to change that use, or you want to add parking places or acquire property, those are the decisions of the City Council, as you would have whether it's the Vehicle Parking District Act, which is that extra layer of law, or the City Council itself under the Government Code for your ability to, and under the Streets and Highways Code, to have public parking places. That's one of the roles of government, to deal with public parking places. So it was presented to us to consider and provide advice to the city on if, in fact, you as the discretionary body would like to consider initiation of proceedings, how would it be undertaken? And that's the resolution that's before you. You are not required to approve that resolution or undertake these proceedings. It's fully within the discretion of this body.
Do we as a city have the power to dissolve the parking district? Any express statute or any law, any cases that's on point that says that the city does have the power to dissolve parking districts?
The city has the power to dissolve a special district by the proceedings that are established for other special district proceedings under the state law, both in the Government Code, the Streets and Highways Code, and other codes. The Vehicle Parking District Law of 1943 is so obsolete and so arcane, and the legislature has not tinkered with it, that the law that applies is the Equal Dignity Doctrine. And the Government Code and case law supports not only the creation of districts, as was done back in the 1950s, but the dissolution of districts when it's determined that they're no longer necessary.
So basically, we would have to argue that it applies by analogy to other similar law then.
It's called the equal dignity doctrine.
Understand. I'm trying to make it accessible to the audience. So, therefore, is it fair to say then that there is no law regulating parking districts that is on point, that defines the power of the city to dissolve parking districts? Is that fair to say?
In the Vehicle Parking District Law of 1943, there is not a dissolution proceeding. It's in the Vehicle Parking District Act of 1951, and it's in other kinds of parking and assessment districts. But it is a correct statement that the Vehicle Parking District Act of 1943, the legislature repealed that section, and it's
So therefore,
then you revert to common law, equal dignity doctrine, and proceed under that basis.
so is it your legal opinion then that if we dissolve the parking district, and specifically parking district number 2, that if our decision is challenged in court, that legally it would be clear, our power to dissolve would be clearly defined so that the court would rule in our favor?
Well, I'm not here to give you percentages, but I believe that the proceedings that we have identified, where we establish a due process, open meeting proceeding, we intend to publish notice. We're not trying to do this in stealth. This is before you tonight to even consider to initiate those proceedings. And once, if you do approve this resolution tonight, then we would follow the due process. We would do publication. We would do posting within the boundaries of the district. We would do mailings to all of the property owners. We would have a public hearing. And so the evaluation by a reviewing court, if challenged in court, would be to evaluate whether or not this body, under the equal dignity doctrine, went through a process where they had a factual basis and understanding as to why they wanted to dissolve this district. Were there facts to support dissolving this district? And was there an open meeting and public input process, due process made available? I believe that is going to happen if that's what you desire to do.
So if we break this process down into 2 steps, one is we have to ask ourselves if we have the power to dissolve. And then 2, are we following the proper procedure in the dissolution of the parking district? Okay? So if we were to break down the discussion to 2 steps, my question to you is, do we have the power to dissolve?
I believe that you do have the power to dissolve. Your
Okay.
prior question was, do we have express power in the Vehicle Parking District Act of 1943?
No, I did not. I qualify with 1943. I just
Okay.
said, do we have the express power to dissolve? That's
I
it.
believe you do.
Okay. And when we look at the Streets and Highways Code section, the defining section, that says immediately upon the acquisition of parking places for the formation of a parking district, that a parking place commission shall be appointed. Now, as a lawyer, shall mean you're compelled to do so. Is that right?
And you've had a commission the entire time.
I understand. So, despite the language "shall," that the commission shall be appointed, now you're saying that even though we are compelled to create the commission, we also have the power to get rid of them, of the power of the commission?
Yes, because you're the legislative body. That's an advisory body that deals with, as I described, the day-to-day management of those parking places. They are not the decision-making body concerning the vehicle parking district. You, as the city council, are vested with that.
Okay. So, when I see the words like "shall," I take those words to mean we are compelled to do so. And yet you're saying that even though we're compelled to create, we also have the power to basically to nullify, to cancel out, to void the commission and leave a hole.
Because a reviewing court and appellate courts have found that if you have the power to create something, you have the power to dissolve it.
Let me interrupt for a second. I want to interrupt for just a second. If you need some time to get some water or a break or something, because you're getting, a barrage of questions, which is fine, but feel free if you need water or
I'm
anything.
happy to answer as many as that I can.
Thank you.
Earlier, you make a distinction, or made a distinction between the management of the parking lots as opposed to the power to maintain the parking districts. Am I right?
Correct. The legislative body, the city council, is the decision-making body for the vehicle parking district number 2. There's only one parking district in your city. It just happens that the County of Orange named it vehicle parking district number 2 back in 1955.
Okay. Any exception to what I just summarized as far as your position?
No, they do not have decision-making, discretionary decision-making authority. They can make recommendations to you. They can be an advisory body to you. They can decide, as I said, for instance, recommend rules, regulations on the control of those parking spaces so that the day-to-day administration is not burdened with this by the city council. I think that from looking at the legislative history from decades and decades ago, the objective was to have an advisory body deal with things on a day-to-day basis, but that the Board of Supervisors or the City Council would be the decision-making body, whether it was a city or county district.
Okay. Anyone else would have the power to override the will of the City Council?
No, you are the decision-making body, other than through litigation.
So in the code section, and I'm referring to 31-851.5, and it says here that the determination that the parking places is no longer needed for the parking district, that the determination shall not be made if prior to the hearing the owners of more than half of the area of the lands within the district filed with the clerk written objections to the proposed determination. How do you explain that?
That's a majority protest. The district itself was formed based on a majority protest, and there are certain proceedings within the vehicle parking district law, a substitution proceeding being one of those, but not a change of use proceeding, where the legislature has identified that the city council can be presented with a majority protest of the assessed lands similar to an assessment district, where they would say, okay, city council, stop your proceedings because you have a majority that has voiced its opposition to what you want to do.
But I thought you just mentioned earlier that when I asked you about your position and that the power in the council is absolute.
Well, that decision to determine that you have a majority protest and to cease the proceedings is with the city council. It's not with the individual property owners. And so you didn't ask me about majority protest. I can respond as well as I can. But if there is a majority protest, it doesn't in and of itself stop the proceedings. The city council has to identify that the majority protest exists and then cease the proceedings.
I don't want to split hair here, but I think it's a point that needs to be you need to clarify for me. So if more than 50% of the landowners come in here and telling me
assessed land,
right, voice an objection, it takes the council to recognize that they are owner of more than half of the land, and then we on our own then would basically seize our power in deference to that code section?
you would cease that set of proceedings.
Right, but we're compelled to do so because of that code section. It's not something that we acquiesce to.
But you make a determination as to the acreage, and it's not one parcel, one vote, it's by acreage. So someone who, for instance, owned 50 acres would have more votes, if you will, or assessed land under which the majority protest would be established versus an owner who had 1 acre. And so you wouldn't just say, well, we have a majority of owners who protest. The city council itself would have to determine whether or not an evaluation of the boundaries of the vehicle parking district, an evaluation of the accessible lands, who owns private, who owns public, and whether or not to match up those protests to the boundaries of the district and determine, in fact, yes, we have a majority protest. Now the statute, in certain proceedings, not in all proceedings, but in certain proceedings, would prevent you from moving forward.
Okay. Mayor, we are venturing into an area that is very troubling to me. There were communications that were part of the confidential attorney-client privilege that I don't want to break by discussing here.
The privilege is with the board.
Exactly.
You can't break it individually.
And I can bring that out into public, and that would break it just by virtue of ringing the bell in public. And I don't want to do that. But I hear things now today that are very different from what I perceive to be opinions that were given to us before. And so I would like to take this up in closed session and talk about where we are legally in terms of the power to move ahead with this item. I don't come in here with any preconceived position, but I am going to do all that I can to not expose the city to needless litigation and expenses, especially in this time. And so I've heard enough today that really is giving me very conflicted, legal opinions as far as where we stand. And so I would like to take this up and talk about it a little bit more in depth in a closed session.
Are you making that a form of motion?
Yes, I am.
Wait till Mr. Broadwater gets back.
Sure.
With all respect to Member Doe and the members, and I'll defer to the city attorney to see if he concurs, we would need a basis under which to discuss it in closed session. The memorandums that we've presented in the attorney-client context are not agendized for discussion because we don't, at this point, have threatened litigation. We have discussed this previously in closed session because there was pending litigation. The appeal and the remitter from the appeal has occurred, and the time period for further appeal has lapsed. I didn't hear all of the details tonight in oral communications. But I don't perceive at this point in time that there's threatened litigation to identify the facts and basis under which we would go into closed session discussion.
Well,
Okay, Mr. Broadwater.
I'm going to take back my motion then and rephrase it. My motion now is to continue this item for at least 2 weeks or one meeting, if not two, so that we can discuss a little bit more in depth the legal analysis that has gone on in this case, not just in the ASR today and the discussion in this meeting, but also in the prior opinions that were given to us, the council.
Okay, so that's in the form of a motion.
Yes.
Okay, hearing no second. Broadwater, oh, I'm sorry. The motion died for lack of second.
When we took over the sanitation district, or did away with the sanitation district, whichever way you want to look at it, we went to LAFCO. And LAFCO was the agency for disillusionment of a portion of government or a part of government or a whole government. Did we go to LAFCO? Did we ask them about this?
We did ask LAFCO, and they said that that it's not within their jurisdiction, it's not one of the listed districts, and that we would just proceed ourselves with dissolution proceedings.
So
LAFCO rejected it.
LAFCO rejected
Just in
it.
talking to their general counsel.
Okay. And how long ago was that happened?
It was, I want to say, earlier last year, in 2008, maybe last summer.
When we went through it with sanitation district, we had a situation where we had a government within a government. It had the same amount of voters, the same voters represented both. But it was somebody that we had to go to get permission to do anything. If we wanted to put up a building or something like that, we had to get permission from the sanitary district. And in many instances, they told us that we'd have to come up with the funds for sewer systems and everything else. There came a point where there was no real reason to have a sanitary district. It just didn't exist. I mean, because we were both the same, we were serving the same people, and one was getting in the way of the other. We wanted to go down Harbor Boulevard with the sewer system, and we wanted to increase that sewer system solely to put the hotels in there. And yet, we couldn't do that without going through the sanitary district. And we couldn't raise funds for a sewer system from the federal government or the state government because we're not in control of the sewer system. So we had to eliminate them because we really had more clout with the federal government, the state government, to do this ourselves than we did. That's not the only elimination that we had. When I first came on as mayor, there were at least 9, 10 commissions. And some of them, I mean, it was just time-consuming from the point of coming up with an agenda for them. They existed because politicians like myself like commissions because it gave them places to appoint people and do things like that. And I had to take that into strong consideration. We had a youth commission, we had a senior commission, we had a lot of commissions that really were a lot of work and time on the staff's part. And we eliminated 5 of those commissions, got rid of them, and eliminated people that I had appointed to them. I think that when you get a government within another government, it is a major problem. I think one of them is going to come to heads with the other. And I think that this has been talked about, this commission. It was talked about 10 years ago when we got rid of those other commissions. It has been talked about before. I believe that tonight we're voting to initiate a proceedings. We're not voting to dissolve it ourselves, but we're initiating the proceedings to dissolve it. It's going to open it up to public hearings, and there's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of time. It's not going to be hidden from anybody. And I'm going to support it tonight. I'm going to see what both sides have to say. I've heard things tonight I've never heard before. But I just do not believe that one government inside another government is going to be anything but an irritant.
It's called checks and balances, sir.
Sir, I have got the mic. And it's all called blocking things from happening. And so I'm going to support it tonight.
Okay, any other comment? Ms. Nguyen?
Okay, the decision I'm making tonight is based on a number of reasons. And my first thing I ask is, who owns this parking lot? And it was advised to me that the city owns the parking lot. Also, I looked at the performance of the advisory board for the vehicle parking district. And it was shown to me that they made decisions that would protect the parking district of Main Street owners, and which is probably the right thing to do if they're part of Main Street Association and Main Street businesses. And I have a lot of friends in there, and I do value the decisions and value what they think is best for them. However, some of the decisions that they made did not coincide with the decision that the city council has as far as for the entire city, and that has to do with the Costco and some of the colleges and universities that were put into the area that is meeting a lot of needs for the growing citizens of Garden Grove. As we grow, we need more and more services. It may be a supermarket, it may be education, but somehow our growth will affect other businesses. And that's something we find in the council that we can't always prevent. And then I looked at the decisions that were made by the advisory board that have been overturned, and I thought, well, they've been overturned many, many times. And that's because, like I said, they had their interests at stake. And the decisions that were overturned, one of them recently, the board took it to court in a lawsuit, and the city prevailed. And the law, I feel, in my opinion, is very just and fair and balanced. And the decision that the court made was balanced for the entire Garden Grove and not just for the interest of Main Street. And as far as legal counsel, I want to thank them. They did a good job. They gave us a very thorough explanations of what we could do, what we may do. And based on what they advised us, we made the decision to maybe start this proceeding. The letter I received today said we started the proceeding already. No, this is the hearing to decide whether we should start it or not. It hasn't started. And also, not only did they give me an informed, in closed session when we had that legal lawsuit, very informed opinion as well as legal issues. And aside from that, as you know, every time we have a meeting, the city council member has agenda review. We can always, one-on-one, call legal counsel and ask questions, which I did, and I should hope the rest of the member does that. That's all I have to say, and based on the number of things that I've just mentioned, I would support to dissolve the district. But I also asked the manager, when we dissolve the district, would the commission still remain, correct?
As the Main Street Commission.
Right. I want to make sure that this wouldn't affect that.
This action would not.
Thank you.
Any other comment?
Sure. Yeah, just to clarify then, if we move forward on staff's recommendation as proposed tonight, it's not automatically dissolving the district, it's just proceeding into the next step, which would be kind of opening up for public comment and public hearing process and whatnot.
Correct.
Okay. Because at a first glance, my thought is that, yeah, more layers of government are bad, and particularly when we're talking about a layer that involves a group that doesn't seem to agree upon everything all the time, even amongst themselves, which adds kind of a little scary element to that layer of government that we're talking about. So I think that alone is enough to proceed, but I'm not convinced by any means tonight that we should dissolve it, but just that we should proceed forward and actually start opening up that public hearing process, engaging people with an interest in that and hearing about it from all sides. So I would support staff's recommendation to move forward into that step.
Okay, I kind of am along the lines of it's another layer of government that we don't need. And Councilman Jones was right. You know, in the district and area down there, it's really difficult because over the years, there are so many people that have ideas and they want the street to succeed. They want things to work out well, but some ideas that are good for some aren't good for others. And I think that I think this is an opportunity, and the council does have the authority to proceed with this. And I think that if we proceed through the process, we may or may not hear ideas that we haven't heard before. One thing that, and I'm not talking about coming up tonight, I know that someone had mentioned it here, but I have heard from people in the community the last few days, you know, threat of litigation. Well, you know, I think this council, for the most part, if not all of us, actually really don't respond well to threats of litigation. You know, we just went through some in the recent past that took a lot of time and a lot of money for everybody and probably was unnecessary for a project that probably will never even be built. But I think that we, as a council, have the right to make these decisions, and I think we should be able to exercise that right. And so I'm going to support this. Do I have a motion?
Move the issue.
I have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received 4 yes votes with Councilmember Doe voting no.
Okay, ordinances for second reading.
Mr. Mayor, 8A is ordinance number 2747 for second reading, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Garden Grove eliminating the time limit on establishment of loans, advances, and indebtedness with respect to the Buena Clinton project area and making other findings in connection therewith.
Okay, any comments, or I'll entertain a motion.
Move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received 5 yes votes.
Okay, Matters from mayor and council members. Mayor Pro Tem Jones.
Yeah, I just want to report on last week I went to Las Vegas and I attended the ICSC conference, which is International Conference of Shopping Centers. That's a big annual conference that occurs in Las Vegas every year. In its heyday, it's the second largest conference that takes place in Las Vegas, only second to the Consumer Electronics Show. So it's a very large conference, typically 45,000 people in attendance. It's comprised of commercial shopping center owners and developers, retailers like Starbucks, McDonald's, In-N-Out, all those guys, and cities, and then also architects, engineers, brokers, all the sorts that deal in that realm of primarily commercial and mixed-use development. We've had some very productive engagements in ICSC in the past and continue to. This year, the attendance of the show, due I think largely to the economy and the state of commercial real estate, was down dramatically. So it wasn't 45,000 this year; it was probably 25,000 people in attendance or something like that. It was way off. So the mood and the feeling there was a lot more quiet and a lot more peaceful than the usual sort of hustle and bustle that occurs at ICSC. That being said, our staff was good in setting up a number of meetings with various developers and property owners that we have around the city, to discuss the status of different things going on town. As an example of which, there's a group called Festival Companies that owns the property on the corner of Euclid and Garden Grove Boulevard that's sitting there vacant. The old used to be a Chevron station years ago. It's sitting there vacant, and they acquired that property. They've worked with the city with regard to some turn pocket lanes, some street widenings for turn pocket lanes that we've requested, and anyways, they're now in a position where they didn't go forward in time, and the market has changed, and they're struggling to try and find a way to get a tenant to come in there. So, it's productive to keep meeting with these folks and trying to go back and forth with ideas on how we can help facilitate them moving along and bring in something that we'd all like to see come out of the ground there. And so we had a number of meetings in that regard. We had meetings with some of our hotel developers, including McWhinney and different groups. They're working with architects and so forth on the site on Harbor Boulevard, and meetings with In-N-Out and as it pertains to their site at Magnolia and Trask, and also another proposed site that they're looking at in town. And anyway, so despite low attendance, we kept our agenda pretty full and pretty action-packed, and the fact that attendance was down actually probably allowed us the time that we don't normally have to meet new people and try and promote the city as it pertains to other would-be suitors to come in and locate their retail establishments or their commercial developments within our city. So I think it was productive despite the low attendance this year.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Broadwater. Do you have anything?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Nguyen was also in attendance, and she'll need to.
I think I have to
I
report.
beg your pardon.
No problem.
We failed to list her on the agenda.
Well, that's okay. I could have got to her when I was done with him, but go ahead. Ladies first.
Thank you, Mayor. I have the same observation as Councilmember Jones. It was a very quiet event, and it's kind of sad. But overall, I saw the development spirit, and I even saw an old city of mine, Appleton, Wisconsin, there, trying to sell homes there. And I thought, America is really growing even in this economy, which is a good sign. I also learned a lot about different retails that are available, new ones that are coming out, and that city should look into and bring into a new look, just as new necessities into the cities. They had really strange brand name food franchises for hot dogs and hamburgers, and we were able to see how they were doing in other cities that were bringing new businesses into their development. That was an eye-opener because I don't know a lot about retails, and I didn't know how important it was to do a study on what kind of retail would fit into a development. And we talked with a few businesses that does just that. They do statistics and studies on what kind of retails fit the need of a city. And so that was very interesting. Other than that, I want to thank the staff for setting up such a nice booth so that everyone can come and visit. I'm sorry they weren't as busy as the year before or the year before that. But it was a nice booth, and it demonstrated what we had to offer. And I want to also thank our sponsors for the booth. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Broadwater.
Well, I noticed you got down here. Happy anniversary to my wife and myself. I certainly, 38 years, it's just went by fast. I don't know what happened. But I want to wish happy anniversary to Jones and his wife, Manny. I know they got married on the same day we did, only 300 years later, you know. Anyway, happy anniversary, Peggy. My life would be less than complete without Peggy. No two ways about that.
I think we're actually 300 years and 1 day apart.
Okay. Ms. Nguyen.
Oh, thank you for coming back to me. I want to thank Robin for such a wonderful job on the the bus bench. It was very nice, and I hope that she would have the urge or maybe volunteer for other benches. I just love those designs. And also, I hope that I can be her neighbor when I turn 88, like Mr. William Young. I want the cake, too, like Mr. Young. I really enjoyed the Strawberry Festival. I want to thank the Strawberry Festival Association and staff. I saw a lot of staff in the streets running the camera, the booths, and the podium. It's this is the one time that I start to notice how much time and effort staff put into something like this. I want to thank him. And lastly, I want to remind everyone to buy in Garden Grove. Don't forget to buy in Garden Grove. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Oh, just one other thing I'd like to point out that I attended in this last week was our staff in the water department came up with a clever a contest that they rolled out to elementary school here at Violet Elementary School, which was a water conservation poster contest, and basically trying to increase awareness about water conservation and how we should all do our part to conserve water. So they had kids come up with posters to depict, what happens if we don't, or how do we conserve water. And the ideas they came up with were very creative. The mayor got to judge the contest and come up with kind of a top 3 picks, and I think he did a good job of narrowing it down to some pretty cool looking ones. But I just thought it was a clever idea that our staff did to create that event and turn into a big festival for this school with parents there and everybody in attendance and kites and balloons and food and all that kind of stuff, and it was pretty neat. And one thing that they promoted there was, I forgot to bring one because they gave it to me, and so I apologize, but I'm sure we've all seen them before. It's a little adapter you can hook in between your shower head and the outcoming water spout that has a turn-off valve. So if you're shampooing or whatever, then turn the water off while you're doing there. Just that little bit of water savings multiplied by 175,000 people in the city every day is actually a big deal. So,
thank you, Mr. Dell.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always sad to see someone pass at the peak of their prime. And with great sadness, I would ask that the council adjourn in memory of Vu Nguyen. He is a former reporter with the Orange County Register. He left his job to go back to school to get his master's in journalism. And 2 weekends ago, while playing soccer, he suffered a heart attack and was in a coma for a week. And then the family agonizingly decided to stop prolonging the machine to prolong his life. And Vu was 34 years old and was married only for 6 months to his wife, Heather Hua. And he is the son of Chiu Nguyen, who is a former field representative for State Senator Joe Dunn. And ironically, a few days after his heart attack and while he was still in a coma, his family received a call from Coastline Community College offering him a teaching position at the college. And so Vu Nguyen has always been known to be a very convivial person, very much dedicated to his profession, to do the best job possible and to be objective and to spare no effort in getting to the bottom line of the story and would not let anything get in the way. So it's a big loss for us, for the field of journalism and for our community. So I would like us to join in his memory. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd also like to wish a happy anniversary to Councilman Broadwater and his wife Peggy, and Councilman Jones and his wife Manny. And a few weeks ago I had mentioned, and I didn't have the names, but some personnel from the water department were involved in a job out on Trinette. And one thing I had mentioned, although I didn't have the names, is that, so often if somebody has a complaint or is a little bit unhappy with the service, I think more people write than people do when they're satisfied or have gotten good service. We almost take it for granted sometimes, or we have the best intentions of thanking people, and a day or two or a week or whatever goes by and we forget to do it. But the job that was done out on Trinette, the resident was extremely happy, and he called, and he had a water service break. And the crews that were mentioned in the city council meeting on April 12th, I had the numbers, but I didn't have the names, was Unit 533, which is Alex Valenzuela, the lead, Harold Gardner, Josh Iranius, David Ortega, and Bob Page. The second unit number that I mentioned was Unit 505, which is Alex Gonzalez as the lead, Ron Dimert, and Vidal Jimenez, and Alex Sr. also. Alex Valenzuela Sr. Was in crew 533. They did a great job out there, and we want to thank them publicly and let them know that some of the citizens do take the time to write letters to thank you, and every time I get them, we'll take the time to mention your name and thank you at the meetings. I would also, in addition to Vu Nguyen, I'd like to adjourn the meeting in the memory of Gordon Lawrence, who passed away recently. He was the owner of Jerome's Interiors on Garden Grove Boulevard. They were there 57 years. And our prayers and our feelings go out to Gordon Lawrence's family and to Vu Nguyen's family. And we'll remember them in our prayers. And we'll adjourn till the next council meeting, Tuesday, June 9th at 5:30 p.m.